Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Flanagan. I am President and CEO of Actua, a national charity working across Canada to engage youth in experiences that build their skills and confidence in science, technology, engineering, and math. And today I am thrilled to welcome Penny Wise, who is the president of 3M Canada, to have a conversation about innovation, about inclusivity and diversity, about the future of work, all topics that are extremely top of mind to many people these days. So thrilled to welcome you, Penny, to this conversation.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm delighted to be here with you today.
So we know 3M, of course, as the innovative company behind things like the Post-it note and Scotch tape and NextCare bandages, which I was applying to my daughter this morning on the way to daycare. But products that we all use in day-to-day life that are really the result of applying science in a way that is innovative and sustainable to create products, again, that really have a positive impact on our lives. So I'm excited to actually dig a little bit into the 3M story and how things have gone, especially in this period of COVID. But I'd love to just start by having you tell us, how did you become the president of 3M Canada? I'm sure you have an incredibly interesting story.
So I've worked for 3M for just over 20 years, and it has been a wonderful career so far, the way I like to describe it. 3M, as you mentioned, is a global company. We have offices, manufacturing around the world, and we have more than 55,000 products that we produce. And you talked about knowing Post-it and Scotch. They're just a small part of what 3M does. We sell into incredibly diverse markets around the world, whether it's in hospitals or healthcare, consumer, like you talked about, or industrial or automotive. And so when you work for such a diverse company, it really provides you an opportunity to have an incredibly diverse career. And over those 20 years, I have been in marketing roles, business roles, leadership roles, corporate roles. And it has really given me opportunity to stretch who I am and what I know and my learnings. The last 10 years before I came back as the president of 3M Canada, I was working at the 3M head office, which is in St. Paul, Minnesota. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to work in international marketing, which gave me the exposure and the opportunity to meet 3M marketers and business people from around the world in many countries and understand our culture. I also had the real honor and pleasure of being the brand leader for the corporation when we repositioned our brand, and what an amazing marketer bucket list thing to do to reposition a really powerful top 100 brand like 3M. And then my last job before I came back to Canada in January, I was the marketing leader for our Safety and Industrial Business Group, which is the largest global business. But with all those adventures, I'm very proud and very happy to be back in Canada and leading the 3M Canada.
I love that story, because so often people, and I relate to it personally as someone who's been, as a founder of Actua, but been with the same company for 20 years as well. I feel like I've led and worked for 10 different companies. Like it's
Absolutely.
been, and that's really part of being involved in a company that's constantly innovative and staying relevant and kind of, moving and pivoting constantly. There's a lot of talk about pivots right now because of COVID, but I think it's a fantastic story. I think most people think that you have to, change jobs or change different, move to different companies, and with a company like 3M, you can get that experience.
Any of us. Yeah, I don't think you ever expect to be with a company, like you always say, 5 years,
Yes.
Right? But then the opportunities and the learning and the engagement really drive great opportunities and excitement for you in a career.
Agreed. So I mentioned this at the beginning, but I mean, part of what I love is the tagline of 3M called, science applied to life. And that's really what at Actua we are working to instill in the next generation coming into the workforce, which is that, STEM is part of every part of our lives is influenced by STEM, but STEM is also an important lens through which we use to solve those big problems, which 3M has done. So what does it actually look like? How is that tagline reflected in the way work happens at 3M and the culture that exists?
So inside those 5 words, 3M science applied to life, I always talk about how that encapsulates the very core of who 3M is and what we do. And I kind of break it down into its components. You start with 3M science. And science really is at the core of who we are. We are an R&D company. And we talk about 3M science and our technology platforms, and we talk about scientific rigor, and we talk about data, and we talk about proof points, and making sure that our science is reliable and that you know what you're getting, that we've done the work behind it. But the part about science and the applied to life is we always talk about science is just science until you make it do something, until it improves something, until it helps something, until it solves a problem. And that science isn't just a bunch of scientists sitting around in white coats with beakers in labs just doing experiments for the sake of doing experiments. It's about finding solutions, and it's about finding answers. And that's where the second part of our tagline, applied to life, is so critical and really embodies the 3M spirit of solving problems, understanding customers' issues, and really wanting to help customers and wanting to help people and wanting to make a difference and really improve lives. And it's about, when you talk about applied to life, that's a big concept. So it's about thinking boldly and thinking big and thinking outside the box. And it's a recognition that science isn't right every single time. There's going to be times where experiments don't work, but you're going to tweak and you're going to pivot and you're going to be agile. But it's all in this pursuit of making sure that you can take that science, apply it to life, and make sure that it's making a difference and that it's making things better. And that really speaks to kind of that culture and core of the way 3M thinks about science and life.
And I love that, because it gets at this nebulous term that we all like to use, which is innovation. And people often say to me, like, what does innovation mean to you when you use the word innovation? And it's just that, like, we have a big mural on our wall at the office that says, innovation is doing the right things better, right? And right things mean the things that help people, the things that meet an end user need, the things that are, solving the problem. So I loved the way that you answered it, and it's exactly the way that we're describing this to kids. Is what need could you meet? And kids are so smart; they see those needs around them, they see the problems, and we want to give them the tools to have that science and technology lens to apply to it. So that's wonderful. So let's talk about COVID for a minute, because of course that's what the world that we're living in, and we all have pivoted in various ways, and 3M certainly has done this in a huge way around the further production of PPE. Can you talk about how that's happened and why that's been so important to your company to kind of be there to be of service in this way?
It was an interesting question when you ask about pivot, because I'll talk about N95 respirators, which is obviously what everybody knows and is talking about right now, because N95 respirators are so critical in the fight against COVID, and so important to make sure that our healthcare workers and our frontline workers and our critical infrastructure workers have access to that kind of PPE. So from a worldwide perspective, 3M is committed to really ramping up production of our N95 respirators, and by the end of 2020, we will have produced 2 billion respirators, which is just an incredible, phenomenal number of respirators, and then continuing to make sure that they get to the right places and to the people who need it, and that's part of 3M's commitment. But we've also pivoted in other ways, because we have so many products. There are products that are part of the fight against COVID, but not on the same necessarily stage as N95 respirators, whether it's directly or indirectly. So in our filtration business, we actually sell products to pharma companies or research companies that help them in their pursuit of a vaccine for COVID-19. Or even in our day-to-day lives, when we're out shopping and we're being properly physically distant in stores, in shops, in malls, the signage that's on the floor, 3M adhesives holding them in place so that they don't wear away, 3M print graphics to make sure that you can read them clearly. So there's very many ways where our businesses have pivoted to assist in that fight against COVID. But one of the interesting ways is part of our culture as well that we haven't talked a little bit about. And 3M's also known for this 15% culture, where our scientists, they have their day-to-day jobs that they're working on in the labs and their projects. But if you have a passion project or an idea or a problem that you're trying to solve, you have permission as part of your role to put that 15% 15% time to use. And so there are some examples where our scientists have been doing that, and we've got some scientists who have been working on face shields and how can we make face shields even more clear, improve the visibility and keep them comfortable so that we can add additional protection. So there's our portfolio that we obviously are pivoting on, but also in terms of our scientists and how they're thinking about problems and options and opportunities to improve, and really stepping up to make sure that we are fighting against COVID and really bringing our resources to bear on it.
That's amazing. I love that because people really do think about the N95 and not. Although I had thought of the tape on the ground, and because we all are standing on it, we're looking at it, constantly everywhere. So, one of the things, and you and I had a chance to quickly chat yesterday. But one of the most negative things coming out of COVID, which is just really coming to light now, as we have more data over the past number of months, is the negative impact that this has had on women, specifically women on multiple levels, but we were talking about women in the workforce, and that the early research is showing that women the advancement of women has gone back as much as 3 decades. And obviously that is of huge concern to those of us who have been in this field, and it should be a concern to everyone because of how hard it was to make those gains and how quickly those have been lost, and we need to take action to counter that. Can you speak about just whether within 3M, I know you're involved in many other initiatives, but just broadly, are you seeing this? What are your thoughts on it? And maybe even speak directly to how you're supporting women or parents or whoever generally within 3M during this period.
So we did talk a little bit about this, and as I talked about, my daughter is 23 years old. She is graduating from university. She is getting ready to embark on her career, and nothing makes me more concerned than to see that she's coming potentially into a workplace where women's opportunities, we've slid back instead of moving forward. You always want that next generation to have the best of opportunities and better than you had it. And so I feel in my role and our leadership roles that it is our job, it is our priority to make sure that what's happened during the pandemic, where women have taken on so many extra roles and had to make decisions about family and looking after family, whether it's children or elder care or family members with compromised immune systems, and made those choices to step back from work or take leaves of absences or just aren't able to put in the time that they were putting in, that they haven't lost their footing, that they haven't lost their opportunity to continue to move forward, because we made so many gains. And I think the workplace is a richer place for it when we bring an inclusive workforce forward, when we bring our best self to work. That is when our companies are absolutely at their best. So from a 3M perspective, especially here at our 3M Canada facility, we have been really focused on flexibility and really engaging with employees. A third of our employees have children under the age of 15. So obviously schooling has been a huge issue for us across the country, and making sure that parents and mothers especially feel comfortable that they can school their children during the day, that we can work flexible hours, that they're working with their supervisors and their teams to make sure that things aren't falling through the cracks, and they're getting the support that they deserve and need in order to continue their jobs and their careers. And we're really emphasizing flexibility as we move forward, even as in Canada, as the pandemic is being managed and we're doing well so far. What does the future look like, and how do we continue to provide that flexibility, that virtual environment, to make sure that all of our employees, but especially our women employees, still continue to have those opportunities? And 3M is also as a company provides really diverse opportunities, when you're a Canadian employee, you can be working on Canada projects, you can be working on US projects, you can be working on global projects, and continuing to ensure that our workforce and we're inclusive and including women in those opportunities. We continue to push forward on all of those as well to make sure that we are not falling back and that we are helping our team continue to move forward so that we do have that best workforce and those best opportunities moving forward.
And what do you think are, what are we going to have to do as women leaders and voices and people with platforms to help us make those gains? Is it, advocating for companies to do as 3M has done in terms of flexibility? Is it, what are the kinds of system pieces that we need to be thinking about right now?
I think it's a combination of a lot of pieces, which is kind of a not total dead-on answer. I think there is work that companies need to do in order to support their employees. I think that we also need to make sure that all of our male counterparts are also stepping up and helping and being a loud voice to make sure that our female employees' needs and all of our employees' needs are being met in the best possible way. I think there are elements that need to be looked at from a government point of view. What options do we have in terms of, are there daycare improvements that could be made? How do we support female entrepreneurial opportunities? Women have been incredibly adversely affected by the shutdown of the economy because so many women run service industries. Yes. Are there opportunities for us to explore other roles, other areas that we might have been interested in? How do we help get people excited about other opportunities or exploring opportunities? So I think there's multiple prongs for whether it's society, whether it's government, whether it's companies, that we all need to come together and figure out how we continue to advocate for women and push women's issues forward and make sure we don't slip back, that we do bring things back after the pandemic as soon as possible.
And having the data is going to help us do that. Having the, non-anecdotal, which, we all have those anecdotal stories, but having that concrete data and having groups sort of bringing that and people like you and I talking about this is going to be incredibly important. So continuing on this topic of diversity and inclusion, certainly it's been also something running alongside of what's happening with the pandemic is a heightened, bigger, more robust conversation about diversity and anti-racism specifically. And to me, that's been a relief to see that at the forefront because it's something that, I've personally been working on my entire career, and certainly at Actua, our niche and the area we focus most on is who's missing. What voices are missing and how do we get them? Not only how do we engage youth from those groups, but how do we make sure that there are employees and that they're running these programs at a community level? I know 3M is leading in this area as well around inclusivity and diversity. How has this whole conversation and movement changed what's happening at 3M? What are some of the things that you're seeing within your corporate culture?
It's an interesting piece to talk about, so critical and so important to discuss. So I think about it in terms of 3M has always had a very strong commitment to diversity and inclusion. I hearken back to in the early days when McKnight who was the founder of the company and our first CEO, talked about the need to let men and women do their thing, explore, and they will make mistakes, but we're building great employees and finding opportunities, and how much foresight that had to include men and women at the time that he would have made those sorts of pronouncements. So 3M's always had a focus on diversity and inclusion, and we really think about inclusion driving diversity. And when you bring your best self to work, then we have the best workplace. And when we properly mirror the society in which we operate, then we are truly being inclusive, and then we are truly a diverse and effective company. And so that underlies all that we do. In Canada, we've been very focused on some very specific employee resource networks, whether it's about a multicultural network, a lot of focus on pride. And last year, we started our abilities network, not disabilities, but abilities network. So really thinking about how we engage and educate and bring those stories of engagement to life. In terms of overall global US, with 3M's head office being in St. Paul, Minnesota, and so much of the anguish and obviously horror about George Floyd's death happening in Minneapolis on the other side of the Mississippi River, it has truly impacted 3M. And you can see a lot of listening and really trying to understand the pain and what has been happening, and a commitment by the company to social justice, and a commitment by the company to like doubling down on efforts in terms of inclusion and diversity. We just announced our global diversity director and our social justice director in the US, and really proud of Garfield Bowen being announced in that role and what he'll bring to that role. So very focused. Very touched by so many of the stories that I hear. One of my very good friends in the US is African American, and she has a son that's the same age as my son, and what she's had to do to prepare her son for life versus what I've had to do to prepare my son for life. So incredibly difficult, and so unfair. So really important for us to be empathetic in creating opportunities and listening and supporting that social justice platform, and how we actually not just listen, but activate it and bring it to life and make changes moving forward. And I see that commitment happening. And I'm really proud to be part of that.
Absolutely. I want to just shift a little bit in this question, and although it's very much a part of it, and that's around the future of work. Obviously, you know, we were in a space where we were talking about, you know, saying things like we don't know what it'll look like, and you know, in 10 years, and we can't predict the jobs of the future, and that's even more so now. That's gone up, you know, exponentially. At Actua, we of course have a focus on the 500,000 youth we reach every year, so in the K-12 system, but another big area of focus is the 1,000 undergraduate students who are working for Actua Network members across the country. And they are going to be entering the workforce in the next 1 to 3, 4 years. They are coming out of those science, technology, engineering, and math fields. And we've been really focused on how the work experience is shaping their employability skills, and specifically increasing the training that we're doing for them, and bolstering all of those things, including the diversity and inclusion piece, which is one of the things I'm most proud of, is how many of those 1,000 undergraduate students will have direct experience working, whether it's in First Nations, Inuit, or Métis communities, or working with vulnerable communities in remote areas, and that they carry that experience into the workforce. But as really one of the top employers in the world in terms of, you know, looking for those special people with skills that are going to bring your tagline to life. What are the top things? What does 3M look for in ideal candidates? What mindsets or skill sets are really top of mind right now?
When we were talking about my career, and I talked about being in international and working in international marketing, I had the opportunity to travel the world, meet with a lot of different marketers, meet with a lot of different 3Mers and business leaders within the 3M community. And what I found was, no matter where you went to the world, there was what I call a spark. There's a spark inside every 3Mer around the world that makes us part of that 3M family. And that no matter where you go in the world, if you meet a 3Mer, it's kind of like coming home. And so I was thinking about it in terms of what's that spark? That's really the culture of who we are, and what are those things that make it right. And so one of them we talked a little bit about was curiosity. That I want to solve a problem. Why does it work this way? What if I do something different? So this boundless curiosity, and not just in your job, but exploring and understanding, and a lifelong commitment to curiosity that, you know, it's not like, oh, we did it that way 10 years ago, we're not going to do it again, but just always being curious and open to ideas. It's about problem solving. So we talked a lot about applied to life and how it's about solving problems and making things better, and just really being curious about how you solve those problems. Agility in the scientific community, in the science and technology world, not every experiment is going to go exactly the way you think. every
Right.
time you execute it. And so there's an agility to, what did I learn? How do I apply that? How do I pivot? How do I change? How do I tweak it to get it right, to make sure that we can move forward and continue to develop the ideas? We talked about customer focus and how are you thinking about the end user and how to make things different. Innovation is a really interesting word, and I know you talked about it because it is an overused word, but 3M is an innovation company. But it's not just about scientific innovation, it's innovation in terms of business models. How do we reach our customers? How are we going to engage with them? Innovation in marketing. How are we going to talk to customers online? What are different opportunities that are coming up? So even though we don't know exactly what the future of digital and virtual looks like, how do we start to apply some of those things? So what's your innovative landscape and how do you think about that? And then finally, I think about it in terms of collaboration. Well, some of our greatest inventions, some of our most revolutionary products are when people came together to talk about ideas, to share what they've been working on, to find solutions, and not just scientists talking to scientists, although there have been some very cool things that have come out of that, but people from other functions in marketing and sales and understanding the customer problem, even customers engaged in it. So making sure that you're open to collaboration and that you know how to collaborate and that you can be a good collaborator, really critical in a company like this. And if you can do all of those pieces and that spark is part of who you are, then I think 3M offers a very rich and rewarding landscape for you, whether it's I always think about early opportunities to contribute. So you don't have to work your way up the corporate ladder because we're collaborative. We're really interested in everybody's opinion and input, and people are welcome to contribute from the day you start.
Yeah.
Or
I love that.
stretch assignments. If you want to do more and you want to learn more about different areas, talking to your supervisor, to your leadership. People have had amazing stretch assignments and learned about completely different parts of the country. People have gone on specific business trips in order to learn and understand opportunities. And so I think it just really helps you push your boundaries, but you have to come into it with the right attitude and the right openness and the right curiosity and collaborative nature. So those are things I was thinking about. And I think those are the things that I look for when we're looking for people within the 3M organization.
The two things that really stood out for me in a lot of your comments, one was just the value of diversity of experience, right? So like working in all kinds of different, like this notion of like, and I think especially this happens in science and technology fields where there's I must do this and then this and then this, like there's a linear path where, the really crazy thinking comes if you're all over the place and having all kinds of different experiences, which I think is something that really stood out in a few of your answers. And then the other thing is empathy. And, you describe it as, understanding your end customer. And, we talk to kids about this is how important empathy is in science and technology and engineering. You have to really get to know what the problem is, what the need is, put yourself in other people's positions to then be able to apply those skills to solve those problems. So I like that you mentioned, both of those things. They really stand out.
I like your comment about empathy in science because science has that reputation of being very cold, hard. This is the process we follow. This is exactly what we do. But if you don't have empathy, if you don't understand the solution, if you don't have that life understanding, then like science isn't cold at all. Actually, science is incredibly rich and diverse and empathetic to what humanity needs. So I like the way you've described that.
Well, that's a perfect way to end our conversation, I think. And it's been so great to talk to you, to learn about your story and 3M's leadership. It continues to be an inspiration to so many other companies. And the narrative that you're sharing today is so important on all of these topics. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time.
Really appreciate the opportunity, Jennifer. I also wanted to thank you. I think the work that Actua does and how you're thinking about our future leaders and future of STEM in Canada is absolutely critical. as we come through the pandemic, as we move forward, education, STEM, these are all going to be critical for us to continue to develop and be a leader here in Canada and around the world. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.